In this Remnant II Build guide, we'll be showcasing our Dead to Rights Painbringer build. This setup relies on the Nightfall's unique mod, the Dreadwalker, which grants the user access to infinite ammo, lifesteal, and a faster fire rate. This build is tailored to reduce the Dreadwalker's downtime so players can utilize the mod as often as possible with short cooldowns. The Hunter serves as the main archetype for this build so we can take advantage of its passives that increase critical hit chance and overall range DPS, while the Summoner class further enhances this build's lifesteal capabilities for better survivability and boosts overall prowess by adding minions to the mix. The Hunter's prime perk, Dead to Rights, extends its active skill's duration when you're hitting weak spots. For this build, we'll be using the Hunter's Mark skill, and because of the Hunter's prime perk, you'll have a generous uptime for the added 15% increased ranged and melee damage. Sustaining the Hunter's Mark effect will not be an issue for this build, especially when fighting bosses. The added weapon range from the Hunter's archetype trait is also a great bonus for this build, and getting this class is rather easy as players can select the Hunter as a starting class, or they can buy the Rusty Metal from Brabus to craft the Hunter's Engram. The Summoner will be slotted as the second archetype for this setup. The goal for this build is to charge the Nightfall's mod as quickly as possible and activate the Dreadwalker mod. The minions can contribute to mod power generation when they hit enemies and also take enemy aggro, giving you a little bit of breathing room when dealing with hordes. The Summoner's main archetype trait, Regrowth, that provides a health regeneration bonus on top of this build's lifesteal, is a welcome addition for more survivability in combat. I advise you to use the Flyer minions that can hit airborne and ground-type enemies, and they can perform effectively when dealing with hordes as well. To unlock the Summoner, players need to craft the Fated Grimoire with the Blood Moon Essence on a Blood Moon altar in Yesha. This will later on become the Tome of the Bringer when crafted as an engram. The bread and butter of this build is going to be the Nightfall long gun. We built this setup around the Nightfall because of its unique weapon mod, the Dreadwalker, which allows you to access unlimited ammo and turns the Nightfall into a fully automatic weapon with increased fire rate and a significant increase to your overall range damage. The Dreadwalker's 10% added lifesteal is a great addition to this build in regaining lost health in combat, but while the Dreadwalker mod is powerful in almost every aspect, its entire duration only lasts for 10 seconds, which is not incredibly long. This build is designed to reduce the Dreadwalker's cooldown so that players can activate it more frequently. To get the Nightfall, players need to defeat the boss Nightweaver in Lossum and get the Cursed Dream Silks as a drop. Bring it to McCabe and Ward 13 to craft this long gun. The perfect mutator for this build is Momentum. Added critical hit chance is more than welcome for this build, and the Dreadwalker mod can easily fulfill the requirement of Momentum due to its spatial capabilities. Momentum can be acquired by beating the Manticora located in Yesha's Imperial Gardens. For my handgun, Enigma is still the best choice for this build. Not only is it one of the best subguns in the game, but this weapon can also generate mod power quickly and charge the Dreadwalker mod, especially when fighting a group of enemies. When dealing with bosses though, expect to use this gun seldomly as you are more inclined to use the Nightfall. Get the Enigma by locating the Cipher Rod in the Labyrinth and craft the handgun. Paired with the Enigma, the Harmonizer is a highly advisable mutator for this weapon. Mod power generation is a must for this build, and the Harmonizer helps the wielder gain a significant amount of mod power when the Enigma hits multiple targets. Buy the Harmonizer from Dwell in Ward 13 and you're good to go. We're not going to play with melee weapons for this build due to the build's design. Your goal is to take advantage of the Dreadwalker mod as often as you can, thus using the Enigma or Nightfall is the best course of action. When it comes to amulets, I highly suggest going for the Ankh of Power for the amulet slot, as it gives you a solid damage increase of 15% and the effect doubles when you consume a relic, and we will be taking advantage of the Glutton trait, so relic usage speed will not be an issue for this build. I suggest using Farron's Sigil as your first ring to boost your mod power generation even further. This ring generates mod power if the user manages to critically hit or hit a weak spot. You can get this ring in Lossum, and it will be given to you as a crest reward by Farron if you killed his twin, Phelan. For the next ring, I would suggest using Xania's Malice for this build, since we will be relying on hitting weak spots, and the increased damage buff from this ring is a great addition in general. Get the Xania's Malice ring in Root Earth's Ashen Wasteland. The third ring we use in this build is the Probability Cord. Its additional 30% critical damage increase is a huge damage boost. Scoring critical hits while using this build will not be a problem, since you'll be spamming a lot of bullets when in the Dreadwalker phase. You can acquire the Probability Cord in Root Earth in the Corrupted Harbor Zone. For the last ring, I'm using the Spirit Stone ring for another 10% boost to mod power generation. This ring can be acquired in Yesha when exploring the Twisted Chantry or Kayla's Rest zones. For another ring suggestion, I find the Cataloger's Jewel good for this build. The mod power generation over time is useful, especially in between fights or when exploring dungeons. Now that equipment is covered, let's talk about relics and traits for this build. The relic that I'm using for this setup is the Rune Heart. The additional mod power generation it provides is perfect for this build, especially when your mod power is low and you need a boost. You can use the Rune Heart to quickly fill it up so you can enter the Dreadwalker phase once again. For the relic fragments, I suggest focusing on ranged critical hit chance, weak spot damage, and mod damage. While for traits, I'm using level 10 Vigor for general survivability. I have also maxed out my expertise trait so I can lessen my skill cooldowns. It is a must to max out the spirit trait as it provides a further boost to mod power generation. Next on the list is a level 10 bark skin trait, which I use to improve my damage reduction so I can have a little bit of added survivability, which I find crucial in tight situations. Lifesteal is part of this build, so I suggest upgrading the Siphoner trait to level 10 to increase your lifesteal percentage by 3% on top of the Dreadwalker mod's 10%. The Siphoner trait can be acquired in Dormant Nerudian Facility Dungeon in Nerud. I also have level 5 Endurance to have decent stamina and level 5 Glutton to increase my relic consumption speed. The Glutton trait can be acquired in Lawsome by participating in the Feast event. The last trait for this lineup is level 5 Handling. This depends on your preference, and I find the Nightfall easy enough to use without level 10 in the Handling trait. When playing this build, your main goal is to use the Nightfall's Dreadwalker mod often and reduce its cooldown, and skipping its cooldown is possible, especially when fighting bosses thanks to the build's overall mod power generation augments. Hitting weak spots with this build is a must to generate more mod power and also deal more damage. I usually go for the following rotation when entering combat. Start the rotation by summoning 2 flyers to aid you in battle, and then activate the Hunter's Mark skill to grant the build additional range damage. After the Hunter's Mark is active, trigger the Dreadwalker mod and enter the burst phase. In this phase, the Dreadwalker mod will deal significant damage to targets. When the mod lapses, it shouldn't be hard to generate enough mod power to activate Dreadwalker once again. If you need a little boost in generating mod power, use the Ruined Heart and it will help you out a lot. The Hunter's Mark buff will be prolonged as long as you're hitting weak spots, and maintaining the additional damage it provides is a plus. Your minions, on the other hand, will also help you accumulate mod power while dealing extra damage to enemies. What I like about minions is they can help divide enemy attention so you can move around the field easily. You can also sacrifice your minions for additional damage and grant you a further boost of damage, especially when their HP is low. Final thoughts. The Dead to Rights Painbringer is a strong build that heavily relies on the Nightfall's Dreadwalker mod. The capability to spam this mod and deal a lot of damage while enjoying short cooldowns is the highlight of this build, especially when fighting bosses. Taking advantage of the Painbringer's lifesteal is a viable strategy since the Dreadwalker's burst phase can inflict high DPS and it can heal you up as quickly as you take damage. If you do have a surplus of relics, using your Runeheart charges can boost your overall damage, so make sure to use one before entering the Dreadwalker phase. This build has a ton of potential, so don't be afraid to mix it up and experiment, like by changing the second archetype to Challenger and utilizing its Rampage skill. So that wraps up our Painbringer build. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys are enjoying Remnant 2 and the builds we're cranking out. We have more builds coming as well as more guides. If you guys have specific combinations you want to see or build ideas, let me know in the comments below.